William L. Peel Jr., class of '74, Bachelor of Environmental Design and Master of Architecture. I did grow up in Memphis, and it was a great childhood. It's funny, when I was in the second grade, one of my teachers came to me and she said, "Bill, you have tremendous ability to print and letter. You ought to become an architect." And that planted a seed, and I remember going home that summer. In those days, we got the World Book Encyclopedia, and our yearly World Book came out, and the feature was on Frank Lloyd Wright. And so I read everything I could read on Frank Lloyd Wright, and so at like that age, second grade, I made a decision, I'm going to be an architect. And it was funny because as my life progressed, I enjoyed putting things together. In those days you didn't have Legos, you had Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs and Erector sets, and so I was constantly building things. As I got older, I built things outside with everything I could find, from scrap pieces of metal or wood, and just loved the way things went together and creativity. Couldn't keep enough coloring books or drawing pads or paints or pencils around the house. And as I moved into high school, I went to a preparatory school, and we did not have traditional drafting classes or art classes like they had at public schools. It was a private all-boys prep school. And but towards the end of my junior year, the headmaster came to me and said, "How would you like to be a part of a pilot project?" And I said, "Boy, that sounds interesting. What is it?" He said, "Would you like to go take the last period of every day and go to the all-girls school and take an art class?" And so two of us went over as an exchange program and took an art class. And I actually got to do some things that otherwise I'm really certain I wouldn't have gotten to do, in terms of silk screening and batik and charcoals and painting. And it really brought out the creative side. By that time, I had spent quite a bit of time visiting with guidance counselors about schools of architecture, and had narrowed my selection down to 5 schools. And the last 2 were University of Tennessee in Knoxville and Texas A&M. And when I went to apply to University of Tennessee, I found out that their accreditation program at that time was in some degree of question. And so visiting with my parents, they said, "We just can't run the risk of you going and taking college classes and them not crediting towards your career goal, which was to become an architect." So made the decision to come to Texas A&M. Truthfully, had never really been west of the Mississippi when I came to Texas and pulled into Texas A&M. And I remember my mom and dad and my 2 sisters and I piled in the family car and driving in the main drive where the administration building is and looking up and saying, "Oh, Mom, I love it." And it's been that way ever since. It was high risk to come here, not having had any background in Texas or Texas A&M. I certainly wasn't a legacy, knew nothing about Texas A&M traditions, quickly learned to love it, and it's been home ever since. The end of my sophomore year was a pivotal time, not only in college but in my life. I was finishing classes. Those days we were a relatively small campus, and I was walking from the architecture building, actually the building we're in, over towards the student center, and people kept stopping me and asking me, "Have you called home? Have you called home?" Well, obviously in those days there were no cell phones. It wasn't easy to call home, so I got to the student center, made a call home, only to find out that my father had been in an airplane crash in South America and had been killed in the crash. So I immediately went back to meet with all my professors and said, "What am I going to do? We're coming up towards finals. All of our projects are due." And without exception, the professors all looked at me and said, "Bill, go home and take care of your family. A&M will be here when you get back." So I went home. My mom was widowed at 42 years old. I had 2 younger sisters. I was the oldest. That was a very challenging summer. And I remember looking up at my mom and saying, "Mom, I guess I'll just go to the local university," which at that time was Memphis State University, now called the University of Memphis. And she said, "No, you won't. That's not in our vision or our plan. You're going to go back to Texas A&M." So I came back to A&M not really knowing what to expect. And my professors and all my advisors here allowed me to make up the coursework that I needed to complete my sophomore year. Texas A&M literally put its arms around me and became my family. And so from that point on, this was home. The home had shifted from being Memphis to being College Station, and to this day, it's home. Gosh, I've had so many. I've been very, very blessed in that regard. Early years, Ed Romanick, who was a former dean of the architecture school, was a great mentor. He taught me in my senior design classes. He became the chair of my graduate committee Ed was quite the character, but he cared passionately about the students, and he helped mold and shape the students. And I remember that he was always so critical, but at the same time affirming about the work that you were doing. So he really helped set the course. And he was the one that made the first call out to the marketplace when I graduated to help me find my first job. So he was certainly a mentor. When I got out into the marketplace, I had the privilege of sitting next to, actually between the C and the S of CRS, between Bill Caudell and Wally Scott. And Wally became quite the mentor and was just a great inspiration as I was evolving in my career and beginning to shift from being in the design side of the business to the business development side of the business. And so he was a great mentor. And then as time has gone on, I've just been very blessed to have people come into my life who've taken an interest in me, seen the passion that I had, ignited that passion. And what I try to do now is to reciprocate and give that back if I can. When I was an undergraduate student here, we had presentations in the evening, and we were all encouraged to be a part of the extracurricular activities. And one of the presentations, we had a speaker that came here, Dave Mayfield. He was with 3D International at the time, and Dave was talking about business development. And I'd really never heard anything about business development. I did not understand how business came into design firms. And Dave started to explain that process and talked about everything from market research to proposals to presentations to how you package design services, and it really piqued my interest. And so I began taking classes that, in my electives in marketing and business law and communications to sort of cultivate those skills to raise my competency and in that area, with the idea that one day I might want to take on that role in a firm. And fortunately, Dave reached out to me, and in 2 summers when I was at Texas A&M, I got a chance to do some market research projects for 3D International, and they ended up becoming my first employer. So that presentation really sparked an interest in marketing communications that's carried throughout my career. Well, that was my dream, was to go immediately into business development. When I got out of Texas A&M, graduated with my master's degree in architecture, I said, boy, I'm going to immediately go to work for 3D International, and they're going to love so much my writing skills and my graphic skills and my presentation skills, they're going to move me right into business development. Well, wrong. That wasn't the idea they had. They were very committed to me getting my registration as an architect, under the premise that I could always learn to be a good, effective business developer, but I needed that credential. And I look back on it and now, years later, thinking how wise it was of them to insist that I go ahead and take my board exams and pass, which I was fortunate to do in the first time, and then get that credential before, and actually work on projects before I moved into business development. So there was an intermediate step in there before I got to realize my ultimate dream. As I reflect on my career now and have a little bit of a deep view into the rearview mirror at my age, creativity has really been a constant in my entire career. I started in the study of architecture, studying design, and studying the built environment as a creative output. It later evolved into creativity in marketing, communications, presentation, into visioning, strategic planning, even management consulting. And so today, the opportunities that I have and have enjoyed really revolve around creativity being at the center. And I had a great fortune of being able to take the creative skills that I learned in design school and leverage those into business activities. And that's been just a great, rewarding experience for me. Making the shift to marketing was an interesting one. I'm a voracious reader. I love to read. I grew up with a mother and a father who are big readers, and a mother who weekly took us to the library and just basically insisted that we keep books going and keep reading happening. And so I decided that I would do some immersion learning, that I knew I needed competencies that weren't a part of my formal academic credentials or curriculum. So I just set about reading everything I could get my hands on and becoming a part of organizations like the Society for Marketing Professional Services, the Professional Services Management Association. And another secret that really helped me is, in terms of developing competency, is I volunteered to speak anytime I had an opportunity, and I volunteered to lead workshops or teach anytime I had an opportunity. My mother's a big influence in my life, and she told me forever that if you really want to master a subject, speak about it or teach it. And so by taking on those activities, it really allowed me to master those areas of the business. And it's true today. Today, when I find something in business that intrigues me or that I'm not quite as aware of as I want to be, I just dive into that immersion mode and try to do as much self-study as I can. Fortunately, today, with the internet, podcasts, and everything that's out there virtually, from online classes to you name it, it's much, much easier than it was in the days of having to trek to the library and dig through journals to try to find that information. Courage is an important part of my career. At every juncture, I've been faced with opportunities to make a leap and take a new position or take on a new challenge. And faith is one of the things that drives my life. And so when you take those challenges in prayer and you prayerfully consider them, God will provide the answers of what purpose there is for your career, but you've got to have the courage to take the first step. I remember working with a personal trainer who said that, success is only one step outside your comfort zone. And so many opportunities, whether it was taking on a new job, trying a bigger project, starting a firm in 1985 in an area that I really wasn't schooled to do, was all a leap of faith, a leap of courage. And I believe courage is very important to any leader. You've got to recognize those opportunities, take that step forward, and act out of courage. Well, my career track's interesting. Some people would say I can't hold a job because I had a number of changes along the way, but it really was very methodical. I started in the design business, but I knew pretty early on that I wanted to move into marketing and communications and development. So I was able to branch out and do that. After building a successful practice in that area, I was able to actually go to work for one of my clients and get involved in the real estate development business, which very much intrigued me. So worked in real estate development for a while, both on the private side and on the publicly held business side of that. And so I got an opportunity to work on the owner's side, on the design side, and really the only ingredient that I was missing that I wanted to be a part of was to work on the construction side. And so in 2011, when I moved back to Houston after having been a part of the real estate development company, the opportunity presented itself for me to go to work for THOMPSON, a very successful family-owned business established in 1909. And so I was able to work there for what I thought were going to be the last 6 years of my career until I came to Texas A&M and had the opportunity present itself with the Mays Business School. So I've been, I guess there's a great quote that says, luck is defined where opportunity meets preparation. So my philosophy was I would always be prepared. When the opportunity came, I would have the courage to act on it. The position I hold at Mays is fascinating to me, and I moved back to College Station, which was a life goal, in 2017, and got a call one afternoon from a friend, a former colleague, who said, would you like to come over and have a conversation with the dean of the Mays Business School, Dean Eli Jones, and there may be an opportunity that's of interest to you. So I went over and met with Eli. He described the position that he was attempting to fill, and it just seemed like it lined up everything I'd done in my career because it involved visioning, innovation, creativity, design thinking, collaboration, facilitation, a lot of the things that I just really enjoyed doing and had developed some degree of expertise in. And so we discussed it, and he said, well, you'll have to compete because I've got to put it out in an open position and recompete for it. So I went through the process of interviewing and meeting all the people that were on the selection committee, and very fortuitously came out on top. The position is Executive Director of Innovation and Strategic Planning. It's a long title, but what it really entails is taking a strategic plan that was put together ahead of my arrival and activating it and making sure that we realize all of our goals between the starting point, which was 2017, and 2021. It's giving us a chance to reinvent how education is delivered, business education is delivered at Texas A&M, in addition to working on a very exciting project to expand our building and really create some innovative academic spaces with active learning, student engagement, a variety of advanced technology. So it's like a dream come true. Who would have ever envisioned that in your mid-60s you get a chance to start a career like that? So I'm very, very blessed. Yeah, I read a book by a gentleman named Bob Buford called Halftime, and like I shared with you, I love to read, and this one really resonated with me because in there he makes the point that we all reach a point in our lives, or many of us reach a point in our lives where we become significantly successful, and success is as we define it, not as the marketplace defines it. And we're ready to make a shift to becoming significant. And I just couldn't get that thought out of my head. What does it mean for me to go from being successful, which I felt I'd been, to being significant? And certainly it meant to me giving back. And I made an intentional shift to stop chasing the brass ring from a business standpoint, but begin to really look at opportunities for me to leverage my skills, my passions, my expertise to contribute to organizations that were out in the marketplace. And so I got a chance to serve, give back to the Boy Scouts of America, which has been extremely important to me throughout my career. I am an Eagle Scout, and it's been a great part of my life. To work on organizations like the Collaborative for Children, that is an advocacy group for early childhood development in the greater Houston area, and be a trustee at Houston Christian High School. That's just a fabulous institution for education in Houston. So I intentionally made the decision to do that. When I joined the THOMPSON family in 2011, they have a very deep commitment to philanthropy and to giving back, led by their chairman and CEO, Howard Tellefson. And so it was easy for me to naturally pick up on that and represent them in the marketplace in a number of ways, working with organizations like the YMCA, the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors. The list just goes on and on. And we created models of significance that I think have become very, very valuable. In fact, we coined the phrase from blueprints to imprints, and we're able to really, I was able to personally benefit from that, but also leverage the family's philanthropy and their belief in giving back to the community. Well, A&M is my family, and as I mentioned earlier, in 1972, when my father was tragically killed, A&M reached up and put its arm around me, and the College of Architecture put its arm around me, and no one will know how much that meant to me at that time. I just needed what Texas A&M had to offer, and every value the university stands for, every cultural standard here resonates with my own, and it's always been home. Even when I was living thousands of miles away, every chance I got to come back to the campus and come back to the College of Architecture, I jumped on. Really enjoyed serving on the we call the CADAC, the College of Architecture Development Advisory Council, working on this leadership model that we're doing the videos for today. All just really invigorated me, and I felt like when I was coming back to A&M, I was coming home. It was so strong that I made a decision well over 10 years ago that this is where I wanted to live as my permanent home. So it's not only been a familial relationship, but it's also just been very, very personal and inspirational to me to be an Aggie. I started in Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts when I was 6 years old, and I remember my mother taking me to a Cub Scout den meeting at the Jones family home, and walking in, and I was lost. I didn't have any clue what I was walking into, but immediately found a group of young men who we became close, some of which were still friends now later, 60 years later. And Cub Scouting became a big part of my life. That evolved into getting involved in Boy Scouts and camping and learning leadership skills, which were very important. Ultimately having the privilege of earning my Eagle Scout Award, my God and Country Award, being tapped into the Order of the Arrow, which is a very important part of scouting. And so from ages 6 to 18, literally till I came to A&M, scouting was very important in my life. Every day of every year I was involved in some aspect of scouting. Then I got away from it, and I was working in Houston in the 90s when an executive came into me one day that we were interfacing with and said, "Bill, I'd like for you to consider getting involved with the Sam Houston Area Council, the Boy Scouts, in a fundraising capacity." And I said, Great. I love scouting. I'd love to do that. So I started working in fundraising campaign for inner city youth, and was blessed to have raised a significant amount of money for that campaign, and have been involved at the board and executive committee level of the Boy Scouts ever since. Scouting taught me character, which is one of the characteristics of our C8 leadership model. It taught me courage. In every merit badge that you would go after, there was some degree of courage involved. It taught me all sorts of leadership, and it gave me leadership opportunities from a young age. And it's exposed me to people of a like mind and like values, and it's just been a rudder in my life for now, gosh, over 60 years. As I look back on my career, I want to be remembered as a catalyst. I want to be remembered as someone that you could drop into a situation, whether it was a position, a volunteer role, or whatever it was, that I would spark creativity, that I would spark conversation, that I would spark things to happen. I'm blessed with some communication skills, written and verbal, and some degree of creativity that I believe I've always tried to bring to bear, and I haven't been shy. I've had the courage to step up and lead when the opportunities presented themselves. But I think if there was one word that I'd want people to remember when they thought about Bill Peel and they thought about the experiences they had with him, was he was a catalyst. He made things happen.